Even as we grieve, we give thanks for this most faithful life. I pray for the guidance and help of Almighty God.
Some royal storms arrived with sirens, crowds, and breaking news banners. This one arrived in a whisper. There were no gates crowded with mourners, no interruption of the evening broadcast, no televised address from the king. And yet, by the time the country understood what had quietly been set in motion, the decision was already sealed. According to reports, Queen Camilla would step away from the most visible duties she had spent decades fighting to hold. Was this a carefully planned move, the result of mounting pressure behind palace walls, or the opening line of an entirely new chapter for the monarchy? Stay with us, because the story behind this begins in a place almost no one expected. And before we go further, what do you believe truly prompted the king to make this call? Tell us in the comments. And if you want more of the royal drama unfolding right now, take a second to subscribe. To understand why this moment landed so heavily, it helps to remember how rarely the monarchy actually bends. Britain has weathered some of the most dramatic royal chapters in modern history, and each one left a permanent mark, not only on the family itself, but on how the public sees it. Some crises exploded overnight, others gathered quietly for years before bursting into the headlines. But every single one reshaped the story of the crown in ways almost no one could have predicted. The earliest of those earthquakes came in 1936, when a reigning king made the astonishing choice to surrender the throne for the woman he loved. The abdication sent shockwaves across Britain and the Commonwealth, and it proves something that has haunted the family ever since, that even a monarch can be forced to choose between duty and the heart. Decades later, another fault line cracked open. In 1992, the marriage of Charles and Diana came apart in front of the entire world. What had once been sold as a fairy tale dissolved into tension, heartbreak, and relentless media pursuit. Confidence in the monarchy wavered, and millions quietly wondered whether the institution could survive so much private pain playing out in public. Then came September 2022, when the nation fell silent to mourn Queen Elizabeth II. After an extraordinary 70 years on the throne, Britain's longest-serving monarch was gone. Streets filled with grieving crowds, flags dropped to half-mast, and the world watched an unforgettable era close forever. Each of those moments swept through the country like a violent storm, sudden, emotional, impossible to reverse. But what reportedly unfolded next, involving Queen Camilla, carried an entirely different weather. No storm at all, just an eerie quiet. Information didn't arrive through a dramatic speech. It seeped out through carefully worded palace statements, released with almost no fanfare. Camilla, the woman who had stood beside the king at his coronation, welcomed world leaders at state banquets, represented the crown at remembrance ceremonies, and carried out countless official engagements, would reportedly withdraw from one of the monarchy's most visible roles. Royal insiders were quick to insist this was no short break, no temporary pause for health or scheduling. According to those sources, it marked a fundamental reshaping of Camilla's public position, a change of a scale that only one person could permanently approve, King Charles himself. And so one question echoed across Britain almost instantly. Why would a king redraw the public role of the very woman he had spent decades determined to marry? Sources familiar with palace affairs suggest the answer did not begin with any announcement at all. It began weeks earlier, inside a private room at Windsor Castle, where a single quiet decision reportedly set everything in motion. So what really happened in that room? Let's step inside. On the surface, it looked like nothing more than another routine planning session inside the historic walls of Windsor. Senior royals and a small circle of trusted officials had gathered to prepare for an upcoming investiture, one of the monarchy's oldest traditions, where distinguished men and women receive honors for their service. An ordinary event, or so it seemed. But anyone who understands royal life knows that almost nothing inside the palace is ever truly ordinary. Within the monarchy, the smallest detail carries meaning. Every chair has a purpose. Every guest arrives in a deliberate order. Every position quietly reflects rank, influence, and the direction of the crown. And long before this meeting began, King Charles had reportedly approved the seating plan himself. One chair, placed in the room's most significant position, had been set aside specifically for Catherine, Princess of Wales. it was not simply the best seat. According to reports, it represented the growing weight she is expected to carry as a future queen and the king's confidence in her expanding role. But before the other guests had fully settled, Queen Camilla reportedly walked in and took that seat for herself. Staff noticed at once. One aide is said to have approached respectfully and quietly explained that the chair had already been reserved on the king's instructions. And yet, according to the account, Camilla did not move. She stayed exactly where she was, leaving everyone unsure of what would come next. Moments later, Catherine entered. Her eyes reportedly swept the table before settling on the occupied chair. She paused for the briefest instant, instantly reading the situation, and then, rather than let the room curdle into open conflict, she calmly chose another seat without a single word. But that silent choice said everything. The quiet that fell over the table grew heavier than any argument, and many present were left with the unmistakable sense that this had been far more than an innocent mix-up. When word of it eventually reached King Charles, he reportedly showed no public flash of anger. Instead, sources say he arranged a private conversation with Camilla, hoping to understand what had happened. Her explanation, however, only deepened the mystery. And then came a twist that reportedly unsettled him far more. Documents are said to have surfaced, suggesting the original seating arrangement may have been altered before anyone even walked through the door. If that were true, this was no spontaneous misunderstanding. It was something planned, and for Charles, one uneasy question suddenly overshadowed everything else. If royal arrangements could be quietly changed without his knowledge, what other unseen decisions might already be shaping life behind palace doors? So why would Catherine step so deliberately aside in that moment? Had these two women always shared a complicated bond? Let's look closer. For years, the relationship between Queen Camilla and Catherine, Princess of Wales, has been one of the most closely watched dynamics inside the royal family. In public, the two have almost always appeared warm, respectful, and united, their smiles and shared appearances projecting an image of harmony. Yet, behind the palace walls, royal commentators have long suggested the story may be more layered than it looks. According to reports from royal insiders, whatever tension exists between them has rarely been about personal dislike. Instead, it is said to reflect the shifting balance of power inside the monarchy as the family prepares for its next generation. With Prince William destined to be king, Catherine's influence has naturally continued to rise, placing her at the very center of the crown's future. For Camilla, the road to the throne was anything but easy. She spent decades enduring criticism, public suspicion, and constant scrutiny before finally earning wider acceptance as the king's wife and eventually as queen. Those close to the palace say she deeply values the role she fought so hard to reach and takes enormous pride in representing the crown. Because of that long and painful journey, some reports suggest she has found it emotionally difficult to watch attention and responsibility gradually drift toward Catherine. Meanwhile, the Princess of Wales has quietly built an extraordinary reputation of her own through years of charitable work and carefully chosen engagements. She has become one of the monarchy's most trusted and admired figures. Still, not everyone frames this as rivalry. Other palace sources describe something far more cooperative, insisting Catherine has consistently shown Camilla respect and kindness, and that both women have simply served the institution in different ways during a period of enormous change. In the end, whatever friction may exist appears to reflect something much larger than any personal quarrel, the natural, delicate handover from one royal generation to the next. So how did King Charles actually handle what happened at Windsor? Did he confront his wife? Let's find out. The meeting reportedly took place behind closed doors, far from the noise of palace life. According to sources, the king made a deliberate choice. No advisors nearby, no private secretaries taking notes, no aides waiting outside. There would be no witnesses, just the king, Queen Camilla, and a small stack of official papers resting between them. The stillness of the room, by all accounts, made the moment feel even heavier. Charles reportedly broke the silence with a calm but direct question. He asked whether Camilla had known that the prominent seat had originally been reserved for Catherine. After a brief pause, she is said to have admitted that she had known all along. The atmosphere, according to the account, stayed calm. no raised voices, no dramatic confrontation. Those who have worked closely with the king often say he rarely needs to shout to make a difficult point, that his quietest tone can carry more authority than anger ever could. As the conversation continued, Camilla reportedly spoke openly about feelings she had buried for years. She described how brutal her journey to becoming queen had been, how many seasons of criticism, rejection, and painful comparison she had endured before finally winning acceptance. Becoming queen consort had felt like the reward for all of it, but now, sources suggest, a new fear had taken hold, not of aging or stepping back, but of quietly fading into the background as Catherine's popularity kept climbing. She reportedly worried that history would remember others while overlooking the hard road she had traveled to stand beside the king. Charles is said to have listened without interrupting. He understood her pain and honored the sacrifices she believed she had made. Yet he also carried a duty far larger than personal feeling. He knew, according to sources, that the monarchy could never be steered by emotion alone, that every decision had to protect the institution's future. When he finally spoke, his words reportedly ended the discussion. The crown, he is said to have reminded her, had never existed to preserve their happiness or even their marriage. Its purpose was to safeguard the monarchy for the generations still to come. According to the account, Camilla quietly removed one of her royal insignia and set it on the desk. If the authority those symbols represented no longer truly belonged to her, she reportedly said, she no longer wished to wear them. Then she rose and walked out, leaving Charles alone. Within the hour, sources suggest, the king instructed his constitutional advisors to begin drafting formal changes, the opening move in what many would later describe as one of the most painful decisions of his reign. But would Camilla really let her royal journey end like that? Would she watch everything she'd sacrificed for slip away in an instant? To understand what was truly at stake for her, we have to look back at how far she had come. Camilla's journey to the British throne was never a simple love story. It was a long, bruising path marked by heartbreak, public anger, relentless headlines, and years of patient endurance. Few members of the royal family have ever experienced such a dramatic reversal in public opinion. Hers is a story of surviving criticism, staying loyal through the darkest years, and slowly earning a place many believed she would never be allowed to hold. She first met the man who would become King Charles III in the early 1970s. The two formed a close bond, but circumstances kept them apart, and in time, both married other people. Charles wed Princess Diana in one of the most celebrated royal weddings in history, while Camilla built her own family life. Yet fate would eventually draw the two back together during the difficult years of Charles's troubled marriage. When their renewed closeness became public, it triggered one of the greatest scandals the modern monarchy had ever faced. Millions blamed Camilla for the collapse of Charles and Diana's marriage. Newspapers and television cast her as the villain of a heartbreaking royal drama, and for years she remained one of the most unpopular figures attached to the family. Even after Diana's tragic death in 1997, public anger did not simply fade. Camilla stayed largely out of view, while the family carefully worked to rebuild trust. But rather than trying to change minds overnight, she quietly carried on, letting time and consistency speak louder than words. A turning point came when she married Charles in 2005. Instead of taking the title Princess of Wales, so closely bound to Diana, she chose to be known as the Duchess of Cornwall, a decision many saw as thoughtful and respectful. Over the next 2 decades, she devoted herself to causes such as literacy, domestic abuse awareness, and support for survivors of sexual violence, standing steadily beside Charles through countless engagements. Slowly, public attitudes softened. The defining moment arrived in 2022, when the late Queen Elizabeth II publicly expressed her sincere wish that Camilla should one day be known as Queen Consort. After Charles became king later that year, she assumed the title, and following the coronation in May 2023, she became known simply as Queen Camilla. Her transformation from one of Britain's most controversial figures into the king's trusted partner remains one of the most extraordinary image recoveries in modern royal history. So how did the rest of the family receive the king's decision? Was there any objection, Let's step inside the room where it was decided. Long before the public heard even a whisper, King Charles reportedly summoned the senior working royals for what was officially described as a constitutional briefing. The invitation sounded routine. Everyone who entered knew it was anything but present. According to reports, were Prince William, Princess Catherine, Princess Anne, and Prince Edward. The mood was calm but grave, each of them aware that whatever was decided that day would shape the monarchy's future. At the heart of the discussion lay an unavoidable reality. Many of the duties and ceremonial responsibilities that had belonged to Queen Camilla would now have to be reassigned. Every engagement, every appearance, every official role had to be redistributed in a way that protected both tradition and public confidence. Prince William reportedly approached it with a steady, practical mind. In his view, the monarchy's strength rests on stability above all, and the public needed to see a clear, unquestioned line of authority. Any confusion about who carried which duties could weaken trust and invite endless speculation. Catherine, however, is said to have seen it in far more personal terms. As documents were placed before her showing engagements, once assigned to Camilla, now listed under her own name, she reportedly felt uneasy rather than triumphant. In private, sources suggest she made her feelings plain to William. She wanted no impression that she had gained from another woman's setback. No celebration, no air of victory, no hint that ambition had shaped any of it. Every step, she reportedly insisted, had to be handled with humility. Princess Anne is said to have spoken with the bluntness she has long been known for, arguing that rules only mean something when they apply to everyone, regardless of rank. If the monarchy expects discipline and sacrifice from others, then those closest to the sovereign must live by the same standard. Prince Edward reportedly said little, but his thoughtful silence seemed to signal quiet agreement. After hours of careful debate, Charles is said to have approved the official order, with provisions unusually firm, making any future reversal difficult. And as the meeting closed, the king reportedly turned to William with a quiet, unforgettable lesson that a future sovereign must never let personal affection outweigh constitutional duty, because the survival of the crown depends on placing responsibility above emotion. So how quickly did the change take hold, and how did Camilla say goodbye? What followed reportedly caught almost everyone off guard. The shift was so swift that many inside the palace reportedly struggled to keep up. One day, Camilla's calendar was crowded with visits, meetings, and duties. By the next, according to accounts, nearly every commitment had quietly vanished. Invitations that once arrived daily simply stopped. Appearances slipped off the schedule without explanation. The steady stream of papers and briefings that had shaped her working life came to an end. Behind the scenes, the changes were reportedly even sharper. Members of her team were discreetly told they would now answer to different senior officials. The household she had spent years building into a respected, independent office seemed to dissolve almost overnight. Long familiar routines were abandoned, and staff reportedly moved through the corridors with quiet uncertainty, unsure what the coming days would hold. It was by many accounts as though an entire chapter of royal life was being gently erased. Then came the moment that reportedly touched everyone who saw it. Her office, once alive with activity, began to empty piece by piece. Boxes appeared on the floor, files were sorted and packed, shelves that had held years of memories slowly went bare, and framed photographs came down one by one, each marking a stage of her long and difficult journey. As one aide reportedly reached for a portrait of King Charles, Camilla is said to have quietly raised her hand and asked her to stop. Without a word, she stepped forward and lifted the photograph herself, holding it in silence for several long moments. The image, sources suggest, reminded her of the man who had stood beside her through decades of criticism and some of the hardest years of her life, the man who had defended her when few others would, and whose own signature now sat on the order, setting these painful changes in motion. The day reportedly carried more quiet signals that a new era had begun. Charities that had proudly worked with Camilla received formal letters explaining that future engagements would now be handled by Catherine or Sophie. Plans for state ceremonies were revised. Processions were rearranged. Schedules were rewritten from top to bottom. By nightfall, almost every visible reminder of her public role had reportedly faded, leaving an unsettling silence behind. And yet, just when it seemed there was nothing left to say, an unexpected message reportedly arrived. Not a decree, not an instruction, but a simple handwritten note from the king, asking Camilla to meet him alone at dawn. So would the public truly accept Catherine as a future queen? What do people actually say about her? To answer that, we have to look at how she won the country's heart. Even as questions swirled around the palace's handling of Catherine's long absence from public life in early 2024, one thing grew increasingly clear. The Princess of Wales herself had not lost the trust or affection of the British people. While the palace faced mounting criticism over its communication, public opinion largely separated Catherine from the controversy, choosing to stand behind her through one of the hardest periods of her life. For weeks, her disappearance from public duties fueled endless rumor, online speculation, and countless conspiracy theories. Every new photograph or statement seemed to spark fresh debate rather than calm it. Many argued the palace's inconsistent messaging had created needless confusion, letting false stories race across social media. Yet even as criticism of the institution grew, sympathy for Catherine only deepened. Then everything changed. She released a calm, heartfelt video, revealing that she had been diagnosed with cancer and had begun preventative chemotherapy. Speaking with striking honesty and composure, she explained that she and her family had needed time to come to terms with the diagnosis before sharing it, and that she wanted to protect Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis while helping them understand within the privacy of home. Her message struck a powerful chord across Britain and far beyond. Millions admired the dignity and courage with which she addressed the nation during such a deeply personal ordeal. Rather than seeking pity, she spoke with quiet strength, reassuring the public while staying focused on her recovery and her children. The video shifted the national mood almost instantly, replacing weeks of speculation with widespread compassion. A nationwide survey conducted afterward reflected the change, with most Britons agreeing the family had shared an appropriate amount about her health. Recognizing that serious medical matters deserve privacy, even for public figures, many drew a clear line between their frustration with the palace's public relations approach and their unwavering respect for the princess herself. Several well-known commentators who had earlier questioned her absence openly admitted they had been wrong, offering apologies and praising her resilience. In the end, what could have damaged her public standing achieved almost the opposite. Catherine emerged with her reputation not merely intact, but arguably stronger. Her image as a compassionate and dependable future queen firmly reinforced. But is she truly ready to carry the crown? Let's find out. For many years, Catherine has been quietly preparing for one of the most demanding and closely watched roles in the world. Though the day Prince William becomes king has not yet come, many royal experts believe she is already proving she has everything an exceptional queen requires. According to royal biographer Katie Nicholl and others familiar with the family's inner workings, Catherine is no longer simply learning the job. She is widely seen as fully ready for the enormous responsibility ahead. Those who watch her closely often describe her as calm, dependable, and deeply committed to public service. Over the years, she has carried out hundreds of engagements with quiet confidence, building her reputation not through seeking attention, but through consistency and patience. Palace insiders often say she is more than equipped to stand beside William when he eventually takes the throne, offering both strength and stability for a new chapter of the monarchy. One of her greatest achievements has been balancing two demanding roles at once, carrying out her royal duties while remaining a devoted, hands-on mother to George, Charlotte, and Louis. Friends and commentators say she and William have never treated family life as separate from their royal work, believing that raising their children with strong values is one of the most important ways they can protect the future of the crown. Her personal journey has only deepened public admiration. Having faced intense scrutiny and several deeply personal challenges under a constant spotlight, she has responded with grace, courage, and dignity, qualities that observers believe have given her greater wisdom and made her even more relatable to millions. Once seen as a shy young woman adjusting to royal life, she has grown into one of the monarchy's most admired and influential figures. If she stays on this path, many experts believe she is perfectly positioned to help guide the royal family with steady leadership for years to come. But did the king's decision damage his marriage? Could Camilla accept it in good faith? For that, we return to the dawn meeting. The next morning, far from the noise of palace life, Charles and Camilla reportedly met in a quiet garden room hidden from public view. No officials stood nearby. No advisors offered carefully chosen words. No cameras waited to catch a single expression. For the first time since the announcement, it was simply a husband and wife facing one another in complete privacy. Camilla did not arrive looking for another fight. Instead, according to the account, she asked one heartfelt question. Had Charles made this painful decision because she had somehow failed the monarchy or because he no longer believed in her? Charles reportedly answered without the slightest pause. His feelings had not changed. He still loved her as deeply as ever. But love and duty, he explained, were no longer walking the same path. As king, his highest responsibility would always be to protect the crown and prepare it for the future. Giving Catherine a larger public role, he reportedly said, was never meant to push Camilla aside. It was simply a responsibility that came with the throne itself. Camilla is said to have stayed silent for several moments before revealing a truth she had long kept hidden. Watching Catherine grow ever more admired across Britain had awoken an old fear that after everything she had endured, history might quietly leave her behind and remember others instead. Then, according to the account, she placed a photograph of Charles on the table between them. It was her quiet way of ending the conflict. There would be no more private battles over ceremonial duties or public appearances, whether the rivalry had ever truly existed or lived only in people's imaginations. She wanted it to end there. Charles reportedly assured her that nothing could change the fact that she was his wife, and that her dignity, comfort, security, and private life would always be protected. Only the public responsibilities of her role had changed. When the royal family next appeared together, Britain noticed a different picture at once. Charles stood firmly at the center, while William and Catherine stepped confidently into their expanded roles. Camilla, once central to so many ceremonies, now stood a little further from the spotlight, and the nation split almost immediately, leaving one question hanging in the air. Had Charles chosen duty over love, or was this simply the unavoidable price of preserving the monarchy for the generations still to come? So what do you think of King Charles's reported decision? Do you believe Catherine is truly ready for the role that awaits her? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story pulled you in, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.